So, hello and welcome everyone to another volume of the TA Speakers Management Inspire Excellence Speaker Series. Today, I am super excited to be here with the inspiring heart-lung transplant recipient, 6-time gold medalist, 4-time marathon runner, speaker, author, coach, to talk about resilience. Born with a life-threatening heart defect, Mark underwent 2 open heart surgeries before the age of 1. 22 years later, he survived a pluralised heart, I hope I'm saying that right, and double lung transport. In 2005, Mark became the first man in history to run a marathon with someone else's heart and lungs. Then he did it 3 more times. Please join me in welcoming Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Tammy, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you so much for being here today. I am excited to dive into this whole concept around resilience. I think that definitely your story lives and breathes resilience. You don't even have your own lungs and heart. So, that's pretty fascinating. And I'd just love to ask you a few questions about like how you did it and why it's important and anything that you can offer to the audience. So, we are dealing with a potential of another pandemic coming. By the time this video's out, we may be in one. So, there's a lot of uncertainties around that. And I think we could all use a little bit of resilience as we go along. So I am excited. So my first question for you is, a lot of what you speak to is around the idea of what if life is supposed to be hard? Can you tell it, which I love that, by the way, not that I want life to be hard, but what if it's supposed to be hard? Can you tell us more about your philosophy around this and why it matters to you and to others, and why would matter to others to kind of have that kind of philosophy?
Sure. So it's actually an ancient idea. Like it comes from Stoic philosophy, and the basics of it. There are books and books and books written about all of the ancillary ideas around that. But essentially, the idea is if you think of anything rewarding that you've done, anything you are proud of, anything that is any event that has shaped you in some way, shape, or form, the chances are very, very good that thing was difficult. It is very rare that we brag about the things that are hard. It's very rare that we talk about those things at dinner parties. It's very rare that we talk about the easy things on a resume because they're less eventful, right? And so none of us sort of sits down one day and says, I want to let's see what hard thing I can do today. At least very few of us do that, but maybe we should, because typically what happens is we face hard things because they're thrust upon us. That was certainly the case for me with my transplant. But whatever the thing is for you, whether it's divorce or losing someone you love or failure of a business, whatever, rarely are they chosen, and yet they almost always shape us. And hopefully they shape us in positive ways, not always, but that's largely our choice, I believe. And so the premise of this idea is, look, you're going to inevitably go through some difficult things anyway. So one, let's not be afraid of that, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So sometimes we make our lives even worse by trying to avoid the things that we know are hard that we ought to do. Number two, the only way I know to get better at anything is practice. And so if you want to get better at handling adversity at a kind of everyday level, or even at a more significant level, the best way to do it is to practice. So how do you do that? Well, you put yourself in unintentionally difficult situations. Now that looks different for different people, and what we mean by hard can look different for different people, but it can be as simple as talking to a stranger if you're really shy. It can mean pushing yourself physically at the gym if you're trying to stretch your fitness. What I'm working on right now is taking cold showers because it's uncomfortable. And what's to be gained by that? A couple of things. One, it's character building, right? But two, it reinforces in your brain that you can do difficult things, which inherently makes the next difficult thing you do easier, because you have that level of comfort / confidence in knowing you've done something like this before.
Oh, that's so good. I was laughing and smiling when you mentioned the cold showers because my fiance does that. Like he'll do monthly challenges, right? So it's this concept of, so I love the practicing adversity and practicing resilience. You're right. Like we can only get better at something if we practice it. And it's just not something that we typically would, we practice. Like if we need to ride a bike, we practice riding the bike, right? Like we don't typically sit down and say, okay, I'm going to practice doing something really hard today. So, but you're right. There's like, yeah, for sure. Like any situation that I've been in, I mean, starting my own business a year ago, definitely hard, was thrust upon me, not planned at all. But then in that moment, it was like amazing to see what I could do. And I think, that's a lot, there's a lot of value there, and it just helps to build your confidence. So we all have to follow what Mark said, and we have to practice being adverse and resilient, and find opportunities to do that. And the cold showers is a good one. I have not braved myself to do that yet, but it's a good one. And it's going okay so far.
It is. Well, gradual baby steps. So I followed a guy named Wim Hof, like Wimhof, Wim Hof. And he has a whole method for how to do it that he's teaching like thousands of people. And you can Google it and get into the specifics of it, but essentially it's just about incremental steps and incremental growth, right? So you start with your regular shower, and then at the very end you do 10 seconds of cold water. And then the next day you do 20 seconds, and the next day you do, and that's the whole idea. Is like it's that it's a psychological principle of gradual exposure, right? They do that with all kinds of things. It's way therapists help people with things like agoraphobia, right? Like if you're afraid of going outside, which is what agoraphobia is. So how do you beat that? Well, you don't go from 0 to 100 overnight. You don't say, okay, I'm going to like leave the house and be out all day and go to like busy places. You say, I'm going to go to the front step. I'm going to stand there for 30 seconds, and I'm going to come back inside, and I'm going to realize that didn't kill me. Right. And then tomorrow, maybe I can do it for 45 seconds. So it's also allowing ourselves to, because what happens, right, is you have this peak of, typically most people in any sort of difficult adverse situation, they have this spike of discomfort,
right.
Nervousness, anxiety, whatever you want to call that. But at some point, if you allow yourself the exposure long enough, that plateaus. And at some point you kind of go, oh, okay, like I'm all right. I'm still breathing. It's gonna be okay. It might not still be my favorite thing to do, but it's not going to kill me. Right. And then if you repeat that curve enough, pretty soon that spike gets shorter and shorter until pretty soon it doesn't. So people ask me sometimes now, like, wow, do you still get nervous speaking in front of people? No.
Yeah.
But it's because it's what I do. And it's one of the most common fears in the world, and most people hate doing it. And I was nervous for a long time when I did it. But repeated exposure over time creates a comfort level where now you can wake me out of a dead sleep and I can go talk to 1,000 people and I'm not going to blink. So, but that's only because I practiced it. And that's kind of that's the idea.
Yeah, that is so good, Mark. And just lastly to say that I agree with that. I mean, I had to do a presentation yesterday, and it's funny because like I'm usually behind the scenes, but I don't mind being in front sometimes, but I prepared and I, was confident, and it went really well. And that was actually what I needed to just continue to be like, okay, I'm not crazy for doing this business thing. Like I can do hard things, right? So thank you. Yeah, just that what you said reminded me of that. And so I wanted to share that. Love it. Love it. Thank you very much. Okay, my next question is, and it's kind of along the same lines, but let's dive in a bit deeper. So I think we can all agree that resilience is more important now than ever before. I mean, it's one of the skills of the future, the current and the future, and ever really. How do we continue to navigate the future with confidence and a positive outlook while faced with so much change and adversity, so much uncertainty, everything else that's going on in the world?
Yeah, awesome. So great question. And I mean, we could talk about this for an hour, but let me give you a super practical way that you can approach this.
Okay.
So I have called this a couple of different things, but your vault of accomplishments is one way I've phrased it before. But essentially, here's the idea: take 20 minutes when you have the time to like really like not be distracted, and make a list of all of the difficult things you have been through in your life, and don't like censor it or like, this is just for you, and kind of go through that list. And then once you've done that dump, that brain dump, excuse me, go back and maybe narrow it down to like the top 3 or the top 5 of the things that you like. As you were going through them, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to live through this, right? Or like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through tomorrow. Or because here's the thing, we've all had those experiences. So often I will speak about heart lung transplant and then running a marathon. And and I understand that that's a rather unique experience, and yet it's not, right? And so what I try and share with audiences is like, look, what's your version of this? Because we've all lived an experience where we felt like we weren't going to be able to get through tomorrow, where we felt like we didn't know the end was in sight, where we felt like we weren't equipped properly to deal with what we were dealing with. Like, that's a universal human experience. And we very easily get caught up in comparing our lives in general, thanks to social media, but also our challenges. So many people have come up to me after a presentation and said something like, I want to share this thing with you. It's nothing like what you went through. Like, there's always that caveat. It's nothing like, and I'm always like, no, it's not like it, but that doesn't mean it's easier. It's just different. Our frame of reference is completely different. Our lived experience is completely different. I have 2 parents who are still madly in love with each other 45 years almost into marriage. Nice. Which is a great gift. I have no idea what it would be like to live through a divorce, which 50+% of the people in the world have been through, and many at a young age. So to me, that's like a wildly challenging experience that I can't even get my head around. So to say what I went through was harder than that just because it's more common is crazy, because we don't have the same comparison. So all of that to say, list your challenges, the things you've been through, and then think about what did I learn? And B, how was I different? How was I different after versus before? And what I think you will discover is that each time that stretch, each thing you went through stretched you in ways you didn't imagine. It allowed you to face things you weren't sure you could handle. And you probably came out the other side somehow better, stronger. Not to say that there weren't negative lasting impacts in some cases as well, because there often are, but you probably learned something. And the purpose of all of that is that, in my experience, very, very few times will you go through the hardest thing you've ever been through. And so there's a decent chance the older you are, there's the bigger the chance is that you have already gone through the hardest thing you're ever going to go through. And if you haven't, you've been through something very hard, or as close to as difficult as this thing. And so instead of looking at this next thing and being like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before, what if you look back and went, okay, but I've already done stuff way harder than this. Like, it doesn't diminish this is difficult, but compared to, like, I use that all the time where there's something where I'm like, I have no idea how to, start a speaking business 18 years ago. I have no idea how to publish a book. I have no idea how to, but I've done stuff way harder than this before. So surely to God, I can figure this out. And I love, it's Marie Forleo's quote. She says, everything is figure outable. And I just really believe it's not a real word, but I love the word because it captures that whole idea, right? Part of my resilience roadmap framework is adaptability. And I just believe, like, you don't need to have the answers to every problem you're going to face. You just need to know that you can find them. So as long as you have the confidence in your resourcefulness and your adaptability, then you've got the toolkit. Like, you're carrying the toolboxes with you, and you will figure out which ones to use when you need to. And once you have that confidence at this deep level, then you kind of have this swagger of like, bring it on, life, right? Again, not that any of us wants things to go wrong, but we know that whatever happens, we can handle it. And quite frankly, whether something is going wrong or it's just challenging is a mindset issue in and of itself that we could dive into in another episode. But that's the concept, is like, build your list of tough shit you've been through, pardon the expression, as a way of saying, if I can do that, I can do this.
Oh, I love it. Getting present to what you've accomplished. Cause yeah, there's been many times where I've thought that too. And then I'm like, oh, but I did do that hard thing before. So maybe I could do this again, or maybe I could do this because it's not as hard. Oh, I like that. So yeah, I like the idea of getting present. I'm going to make my list, and listeners, I hope you do too. Cause I think there's time, to do that, and it's worth value. So yeah, I'm definitely going to make my list. So thanks for sharing that with us. And one more question for you before you go is, how'd you do it? How did you do it, Mark? So you've battled so much adversity and you've come out on top. You have this amazing speaking business. You're making a big difference for people in the world through sharing your own adversity. So just tell us, is there any magic sauce? Like, or is it a lot of what we've been talking about? Like, just tell us how you did it.
I mean, we've covered a lot of it. So I teach
Right.
I teach a framework I call the resilience roadmap, and it's the full thing is 7 steps. The core of it is 4, and so we can quickly go through those. Obviously, we can't do much depth right now, but you'll get the
High
concept.
level. Yeah.
And so the first one is acceptance. So a big piece of adversity, a big piece of getting through adversity, and a big way that we get in our own way is we resist accepting the parts of this, of whatever it is that we can't change. So, I'm going to use getting diagnosed with cancer as a good example, although it's a horrible event in somebody's life, but it's something that most people know somebody who's been through it and have had some experience with that kind of idea. So let's say that happens to you. Well, the first thing you need to do is accept that it's happened. And anytime there's a big change in your life, there's a temptation to resist it, right? To deny it, to live in intentional or unintentional denial. And so first we just have to say, okay, it is what it is. That's kind of how I encapsulate that. Doesn't mean we're okay with it. Doesn't mean we're glad that it happened. Doesn't mean that it doesn't still hurt. Like, all of those things are still there, but we just accept the fact that it's happening. And we then think about, okay, what aspects of this am I in control of? And what aspects of this am I not in control of? And when we do that exercise, and you can do that with something as simple as getting caught in traffic, by the way, but it works at all levels of challenge. Then I say, okay, the parts that I don't control, I need to work on letting go of. And that's easier said than done, but that's what you have to do. So every time that pops up again, you got to go, wait, that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my job. I can't fix that. What are the things I can control? And let me use my finite time and energy on these things instead of burning them on these things, so I have nothing left for this stuff, if that makes sense. Once we've done that, then you say, okay, I don't want to stay here. So the next step is adapt, right? The world for me, my world has now changed. So how do I need to do things differently because the world has changed, the rules are different, all of that stuff. We've done that. We've all done that over the last 18 months, right? We're carrying hand sanitizer and wearing masks and doing, and how bizarre is it that, oh, I don't have my mask as I get into my car is like a second nature thought now.
It is. Yes.
It's like as you leave the house in the morning, you're like, okay, I need my keys, phone, wallet, mask, right? So the completely foreign and wild idea. And if you told us this 4 years ago, we'd be like, what? Like, that's insane. But now we've just adapted, and that's part of our reality. So we adapt. Then the next piece is aim. Like, where do we want to go? The way to find motivation and courage and hope and all of that stuff is by having this, I believe anyways, having a fundamental belief that tomorrow can be better than today. And in order to do that, you need to have a clear, compelling vision for what tomorrow might look like. Doesn't mean you have to be right even. You just have to be something that you believe is worth fighting for. Adversity is actually never the problem. The problem is that we sometimes feel like the adversity we have to go through isn't worth it. And that's when we get discouraged and depressed and mentally drained and all of the rest of it. We will climb mountains and cross deserts and swim oceans if we think that what is on the other side of that is worthwhile. And that's why you've been able to do the hard things you've had to do, is because you knew that it was worth doing. So we have to, if that vision isn't clear, then we have to create one. So when I was going through my transplant, I didn't know with great confidence that I was going to live through it, but I knew that part of psychologically making it through it was going to be believing that there was something on the other side of this that was better than what I was doing right now. And then finally, the last piece of the framework is action. So often when we face challenge and change, we get in our heads. And it's important to think through things, and that, like, there's a place for that. But at some point, we just have to start moving. And a lot of us get paralyzed by being afraid that we're going to take the wrong action, we're going to go the wrong direction, we're going to make a wrong move. And my experience has been that there are very few mistakes you can make that can't be undone, but standing still never gets you anywhere. And so, like, just do something. And if it's wrong, then guess what? We go back all over again and we start all over again and we start adapting and we try something else. But if you don't start moving, then you feel stuck. And people wait. They often make the mistake of waiting till they feel super confident and feel motivated before they go do something. Like, oh, I'm going to work out tomorrow when I feel like it.
Mhm.
Most of the time you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
That's okay, right? Like, that's why habits are so important, and that's another whole topic. But just do it first and adjust later. And so, I give the analogy of running marathons, and I say, I've run 4 of them. I possess no natural athletic ability. The only reason I've been able to do a marathon is because I decided I could. And I realized very quickly that all it was putting one foot in front of the other until I got to a finish line. Like, there's very few things that are simpler than that. And so it becomes purely a question of will, right? Like, how bad do I want to do this? How much discomfort am I willing to tolerate? And so when you break down, if you stand at a start line and say, I'm going to run 26 miles, that's like, but if I stand at a start line and say, I just need to put one foot in front of the other indefinitely, then like it becomes much, much more doable. And so the one more step philosophy is something that I use regularly when I'm not feeling it that day. I just say, okay, get up tomorrow and do your best. Like, let's make it through the next hour. Let's put in a good 45-minute work session here. Like, you break it down into those steps till it becomes super manageable.
That is so good. There's so much goodness in that. Thank you. I loved that. And yeah, I love my one thing was like standing still doesn't get you anywhere. So you're right. Like, oh, and I have been in that stuck phase. So I know that stuck phase. But now with this insight, I'm going to move beyond that. And you're right. Comes a point where you just have to do it. It's like, as Nike said, just do it, right? It's like you just have to do it.
100%. I did a webinar for our colleagues once, called the spaghetti strategy, which is really my whole business philosophy. It's like, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Like, you're not going to know if the idea is good. I mean, okay, occasionally you have an idea and you're like, no, that's ridiculous. Yeah. But most of the time it's like, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe this is stupid. I don't know.
Will this model work? Yeah.
Get over your fear of what might happen or what other people are going to think, because that's usually what's holding us back, and just try it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You look silly, or you learn something, or what? Like, people are too afraid of judgment, and too afraid of failure, so they hold themselves back.
I love it. Fail forward is what I take from that. So,
yes.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. There's so much here that we can unpack. I am excited. I am sure that there's a lot for you, audience, a lot that you can take away, just those little pieces. And maybe by the end of this, we'll all be having cold showers. Who knows? Right? So if you do have a cold shower, great. Yeah, I might do it. I'm toying with the idea. I'm not completely convinced, but
30 seconds, 10 seconds.
If you do take on Mark's challenge of cold showers, do let us know. We would love to know. Comment in the comment section, and we'll give you a little shout out. So, but thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you had a little bit more insights on resilience. You can certainly reach out to Mark directly, or myself if you want to chat more. Would love to chat more about resilience. But thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, bye, Mark.
Take care.